What year was TCU founded? Give me one quick second to put the poll up. If you feel so inclined, please feel free to answer on the poll that I just shared. Um, if you know the right answer, great. If you don't know the right answer, guess. Perfect practice for all your finals that are coming up. Just kidding. Don't guess. Study so that way you know. All right, I'm gonna end this poll. I'm gonna share the results. As you can see, 81% of us thinks TCU was founded in 1873. And that is correct. All right, next question. Um, what percentage of graduates are hired within 6 months of graduation? That's going, we have less than 50%, 76%, 84%, or 98%. Okay, we don't seem as confident on this question. No worries. This also could be good practice for the panelists. If y'all want to participate in the poll, please feel free to. All right, I'm gonna end it because it looks like the answers have stopped coming in. This one, the majority of us actually got wrong. The right answer is actually 98%. 98% of grads are hired within 6 months or in graduate school. So we're really proud of that statistic. And that's something you can look forward to as you come to TCU. All right. What is the name of our horned frog mascot? This one, might be easy for you, might be hard. I don't know. So far we've got everyone right. Oh, less right now. Let's see where we end up. A lot of fluctuation. Okay, I'm gonna stop it right now. Um, let's see. 55% of you were correct. Our mascot is Super Frog. We're really excited for the fall game coming up on Saturday. Um, Fun thing to get involved in when you're on campus. All right. Students hail from all 50 states and how many countries? How many countries do you think are represented at TCU? Okay, I'll give you guys like 2 more seconds to answer. All right, I'm gonna end it. This one is a close battle. Um, the correct answer is actually 90. So only about 33% of you got that right. That's okay. When you come to TCU, you'll see. You'll see for yourself. All right, last question, maybe the funnest question, talking about football again. What athletic conference does TCU compete in currently? Current is the most the best description I can give for you, or the biggest hint. All right. Great job. We know our football. 80% of you know that TCU is in the Big 12. All right. Moving forward to today's event. So once again, welcome. Thank you all for joining us today. We're really excited to have you and excited to share a little bit more about ways that you can get involved on TCU's campus as a student. First, I'm just going to go over a quick little admission timeline because we know that most of you already are a little familiar with TCU and the admission timeline. I just quickly want to go over some dates that are coming up for us. Then we'll talk about some of the different student resources and how we've categorized those for the night. We'll meet our panelists, and then it's up to you to type your questions We will not be using the chat feature on this webinar, but there is a Q&A feature. So if you have questions, please feel free to add them there. Okay, so moving on to admissions, we are a mission-driven university, which is one of the things I love most about TCU. And the mission is to educate individuals to think and act as ethical leaders and responsible citizens in a global community. So I'm really proud to work for a university that really thrives on making students think for themselves, act for themselves, and then really consider the global portion of that. So we're not just worried about what's going on here in Fort Worth, even though it's probably the best city in Texas. Just kidding. If you like other cities in Texas, we like them too. But it's not just even talking about Texas or the United States. We're talking about the world as a whole, and that's really where we're going to be able to make a difference. So just quickly for the first year timeline, if you've already applied, whether that be early action or early decision, you would have submitted your application by November 1st, and you will hear back from us by January 1st at the latest. This is not like you will receive your response on January 1st, but you should receive it at the latest January 1st. Moving forward, our next deadline is coming up on February 1st. So if you missed that November 1st deadline, no worries. You still have an opportunity to apply. You can decide whether you want to apply early decision 2 or regular decision. So early decision 2 is going to be that binding contract. And in which case, if you sign that agreement, you'll hear back from us by March 3rd. And if you just want a regular decision, you'll hear back from us by April 1st. Just quickly to mention, we do take a holistic review. So we are looking at all portions of your application. That includes your academics, so your transcripts from high school, as well as any extracurriculars. We read your essays. So double check, triple check. Make sure those essays look great. And we ask for one teacher and one counselor recommendation. All right, moving forward. So the 3 categories that we're that we've invited panelists to cover about are social, academic, and health and wellness. So starting off with our social life here at TCU, just a brief overview. We have about 400 different student organizations on campus. There are also community service opportunities within the city of Fort Worth, as well as some more surrounding areas in the DFW. And then there's also the opportunity to work on campus by way of student jobs. They call them frog jobs, of course. And we love that about TCU. The next portion that we kind of are gonna talk about and that we have a representative from is academics. So of course, our biggest resource here on campus in lieu of academics is our library. They have a writing center. We also have peer-to-peer tutoring. We also have a 13-to-1 student to faculty ratio, which means you'll have your professors as helpers, as well as points of contacts. So you shouldn't lack when it comes to making sure you have the support you need to be successful academically. And then finally, health and wellness. Of course, we have a recreation center where students participate in gyms. We also have sand volleyball courts that are always busy. Not so busy lately because it is getting chilly for us Texas folk. But we also have a counseling and mental health center and also intramural and club sports. So without further ado, I am going to introduce our 3 panelists that we have with us here tonight. Just a huge thank you to them for taking the time out to being involved with this and making sure that you all kind of have a better idea of what kind of support we have here on campus. So I'll start with Dr. Wood, who is the director of counseling and mental health at Texas Christian University. TCU has been listed in the top 25 of best counseling and student support for the past 4 years by the Princeton Review, and we're currently ranked number 11. Dr. Wood is a past president for the Texas University and College Counseling Directors Association and a current executive board member of the Association for University and College Counseling Center Directors. He wrote the award-winning ebook, A New Narrative for College Mental Health, 4 key objectives that every campus counseling center should obtain, and has been interviewed in publications such as the Texas Tribune, the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, U.S. News and World Report, the Chronicle of Higher Education, Insider Higher Education, Harvard Business Review, and the New York Times. He currently writes a weekly column for Forbes.com on mental health and emerging adults. Dr. Wood also has trained over 100 different schools on various aspects of TCU's comprehensive collaborative care model, which he founded in 2019. He earned his doctorate at the University of North Texas. And just for add-ons, a fun fact about Dr. Wood is that he's obsessed with his 125-pound German Shepherd named Tiny. Thank you, Dr. Wood. I'm excited to see pictures of Tiny, hopefully one day. All right, without further ado, I'll next introduce our academic representative, Ms. Amy Harrison, who is currently the Humanities, Theater, and Women and Gender Studies Research Librarian and Liaison for 6 departments, being English, Modern Languages, Spanish and Hispanic Studies, Theater, Film, Television and Digital Media, and Women and Gender Studies. She's held this position for 16 years, and her primary focus is collection development for these departments, teaching research instruction for each discipline, and helping students, faculty, and staff with their research. Ms. Harrison's fun fact is that she and her brother carried the Olympic torch in 2002 at the Salt Lake City Olympics. And she's also a big anime and manga fan. My question would be, are you going to be going back to Salt Lake in 2034? Too cold. All right, and finally, we have our final panelist is Dulce, who is a junior at TCU, currently majoring in nursing with a minor in child development. She's actively involved on campus as a TCU Ranger, lead resident assistant, member of Order of Omega, which is a Greek honor society, a member of Panhellenic sorority member, the Access Initiatives intern for the Office of Admission, and a TCU ambassador. Dulce's academic journey includes being part of the Get In program at TCU Nursing, focusing on geriatric nursing. She also had the unique opportunity to study abroad, spending 2 weeks in London and 10 weeks in Rome over 2 summers, broadening her perspective and enriching her academic experience. And in case you're wondering, TCU, Dulce's first year at TCU, she was able to experience TCU's winning streak, making her introduction to campus life even more exciting. All right, so now we know our panelists. Without further ado, we have gotten some questions. So I will start by reading that. And whomever wants to chime in first, please feel free to jump in. Can you share any personal story of how campus involvement positively impacted your own college experience? Anybody want to start?
I did not go to TCU. I've actually been on 4, I guess, counting TCU campus. I have 2 bachelors, which I got from Southwestern University in Georgetown, Texas. I have a master's from University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, and a master's from UT Austin. Now, each one of those campuses is very different. UT Austin is a city amongst itself. It's like 50 to 80,000 students. You can hear their souls sometimes at night. Whereas my undergrad was 1,400 students. So, a lot of personal care. I think I learned to get involved on campus at Southwestern. There are only 1,400 of us, so you can literally be involved in everything. I was in theater. I was theater groups. I sang. I ran the gender studies library. I was a departmental student, a departmental assistant for two departments. Um, I think what it does is, first of all, it gives you a break from studying, which you do need to take. It puts you in connection with people not only at the university, especially at Southwestern, at an upper level, so you can understand how your university works. You can learn resources, you can get to know people. I knew the dean of students. I used to have meetings with the president at Southwestern because it was so small, you could do that. At UT, when I got involved with the different libraries on campus, there's 13 libraries there. I got to learn more about the field that I was going into. I had fellow classmates who got to do research with their faculty members, not because they were in class with the faculty members, but because they might have met at a tailgate situation. So, like going to a game got them onto a research team for psychology. So sometimes you never know who you're going to meet when you get involved in organizations. You might meet your future boss at an organization a function. Not only that, it helps you develop as just connections that you will have. I am still friends with most of the people I met at Southwestern. I just got a phone call from someone who's wishing me an early happy birthday that I've known since my freshman year in college. I'm still friends with all my roommates from college. So you build those long lasting connections and they meet you when you're starting to formulate who you really are and how you want to connect with the world also.
Yeah, I love that. That's powerful. Anywhere you are, you might find a connection, so be ready for that. Dr. Wood, were you gonna add something?
No, I was just gonna say from my life, it's just my undergraduate. There's definitely different. I think the first couple years, like I knew I was going to grad school, so that was kind of my focus, even as my first like day of undergrad, to trying to figure out, okay, I'm gonna be so competitive, try to get the highest class rank, all this type of thing. And that was my main focus that I really kind of put, or I did put academics as like end all be all, that the college experience was just grades. But then I changed about my third year into it. Because I went to majors and we needed a cohort and we actually needed each other to like get through. And there was such a difference from being engaged like with our psychology, like psych club, national honor societies, that's one of the regrets that I wish I had that all the way through, even for the first 4 years, instead of just kind of waiting. Because the mindset is, well, college experience, like you were saying, you meet some of the best friends, but you also just enjoy it more and you get more done when you have the connection with other people. So I would just use that as kind of a lesson learned from me. Just don't be so focused on grad school day one that you miss out on friends and connections during undergrad.
I was gonna speak as a TCU student. I will say, literally getting involved has impacted my experience here at TCU. Prior to coming to TCU, I knew that like I'm very much introverted, and so I was like, if I don't put myself out there, I'm not gonna meet people. And I would say that like the organizations that I've like been a part of, I don't regret it. Through like being an RA, I was able to meet like some friends. For example, like this year, I was switched to a different residence hall because I became an LRA, but literally every single day you can just see me hanging out with like the other RAs that I work with. And we joke around all the time that we're like, oh, when like, for example, some of my RAs were like, oh, when we get like, when we each have our own wedding, like you're going to be invited to the wedding and stuff like that. So I've been able to like meet people and make those connections. And then, for example, as a TCU Ranger, again, I met even more people. Like I like to refer to the TCU Rangers as my second family, which is something that I'm like, had I not joined the team, maybe I wouldn't have known the people that I know now. And even like when I decided to join a sorority, it was through my sorority that I found out I could apply to be a TCU ambassador. So I feel like just being involved on campus opens up many doors and resources. And like they mentioned earlier, sometimes as a student, you might want to study every single day, but you do need that little study break because it will help your mental health and it will make college more enjoyable.
Great. I'm glad you left off on mental health because we actually just had a question about that. Dr. Wood, can you tell us more about what mental health services are available to students and how they can access them?
Yeah, so we do have a full-fledged counseling center. So it's free, well, no additional cost. So your tuition covers it. I want to say it's free. But as long as you're an enrolled student, the day that you move in is the day that you're eligible to become our client. Um, and yeah, I mean, our staff, we're known for TCUs. We have a lot of resources here in our counseling center that other schools don't have, which I think is actually kind of evident by the number of schools that literally try to copy some of our models. Like you mentioned, we train literally over 100 schools. I wrote for national publications and things like that. So the way it's broken up is we do have just regular staff therapists. And the biggest question, are they real therapists? And yes, they're real psychologists, they're real counselors, they're real social workers. Once you turn 18, confidentiality belongs to you. So if you don't want anyone to be involved, like your parents or anything, you don't have to. But if you do, you just have to sign a release. But it's not part of your educational record. It really is a full-fledged counseling center. I think the thing that separates us is that we also have a separate partnerships with a bunch of treatment centers, because in other schools, the ideal is that college mental health is very limited. You know, it's just kind of short-term, very limited. But we do know that some of our students have high mental health needs. So we have these programs from like treatment centers that we bring onto campus, and then we actually use grants and donors, things like that, to help fund for that. So we also have a huge variety of that. And then we do tons of peer support, which are student-led initiatives. And you put all that together, I think that's why our ranking is so high, because there's not a lot of schools. In fact, I can tell you there's a big school down south, about maybe 60,000 students, that said that we have more programs at our school than they do in theirs. So that kind of gives you kind of a glimpse of what we offer.
Yeah, and a glimpse to like how accessible that the resources actually are. Because we only serve about 10,000 undergraduate students, and then to think of how involved our programs actually are, it just proves how much access a student has to those resources. Thanks, Dr. Wood.
Yeah, of course.
Um, let's move into some of the academic aspects. Ms. Harrison, if I can ask you, what are some key academic support resources that you think students should know about within their first semester at TCU?
Okay, so I'm going to speak to libraries first because that's my wheelhouse. But one of the things that I tell people is that because I work with students and I'm kind of a value-free space, I'm not grading them, but I'm with them on the homework. They kind of open up to me and talk about the other services, a little bit of what we have on campus that help with academics. As far as the library is concerned, our library is open 24/5, first of all, so there's space. A lot of people think books and studying, but there's also an aspect of space and tools. A lot of what we have to offer is both a vast amount of resources such as databases, ebooks, things like that. The typical things that libraries have to offer. I've been at three different schools, and I've worked in a number of academic libraries. And the amount of databases we have here is phenomenal. We have over 500 databases, access to everything from regular newspapers like New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street journals. You don't need a subscription to those anymore. You can literally access them and go beyond that paywall you hit on the internet, and scholarly journals. But we also have a fab lab where you can do 3D printing, laser printing, play VR games, sewing machines. A lot of design students and theater students who, when the theater building closes and they need to design something for class, can come over here and use those. We have media editing suites. If you have a podcast you have to do for class, you can come over here and edit those. So it's not just about books so much. We have those and those are great, but there's also other resources. You can check out laptops. You can check out cameras, calculators, Right now, we're working on a program to get resources for neurodivergent students who may need tools to help them read, speech to text tools, which I use myself. And of course, being open 24/5, that means you can literally come here at 3 a.m. in the morning and crack open a book with your friends and study. Other services that students have worked with students is academic services. Academic services are is a place you can go if you need special help with the class, if you need a direction toward academic advising, counseling. That's a big resource on campus. Another is writing center. Use the writing center. Okay, I can't advocate that enough. My students get here and they're used to writing at a high school level, and they're like, I can write, and they get that first paper back and they go, oh, I know I can't. So both the library, which I will help you find resources and do topic development, and the writing center where you can make an appointment and get help with everything from citation to working on making your paper better. You can schedule an appointment and they will help you. They will help you virtually. What I tell my students is if you need help, ask. That's the first hurdle students have to get past with our academic services because they're phenomenal. But you have to, where can I go? Don't be afraid to ask for something. I tell my students that all the time because even if we don't have it, enough students ask, we'll try to get it. That's how we ended up with the 3D printing machine and laser printing. And students were like, can we get a sewing machine? Is that weird? Well, we'll get two and an aborting machine and a surgery machine. How's that? That's great. So that's one thing about TCU. The services we do have all gotten here because students have asked. We're here to serve you. So
Yeah, I love that. You don't get what you need unless you ask for it. So be ready to ask questions and ask for help. I love that. We just had another question come in. This is probably more for anybody. But what challenges have you had to overcome to get to where you are today?
I think for me, the biggest thing was like what I wanted to get out of my college experience. Obviously, we all want to graduate with like our bachelor's degree, but it was also like, what do I want to get out of it? And so when I came to college, I was like, I want to try out new things, things that I haven't done before. And one of those was going abroad by myself. So as soon as I got here to TCU, I knew that I wanted to study abroad. And I remember I told my academic advisor, I don't know where I want to go. I just know I want to be out of the US for a while. So tell me how to do this. And so we walked through it, and that's how I ended up doing my first study abroad program in London, and I absolutely loved it. And that's one of the things that I like here about TCU is that there is support. Like Miss Amy just mentioned, like if there's something that you want and you literally ask a faculty member or someone here at TCU, they will point you towards the correct resources to do it. Another great example is I remember one time I like spoke with one professor that I had for intro sociology. I just had him once. I never had him again. But we were talking at like Dutch's about what my plans were post grad, and I told him, "Oh well, I briefly want to take the. I think I want to take the MCAT. If I pass it, I think I want to go to med school." And the next day, I woke up to an email from him where he pretty much sent me his son's study guide on how his son studied for the MCAT and got 100. And so now I'm currently trying to study for the MCAT because that's something that I want to do. But as cliche as this may sound, like here at TCU, if you want a resource or you want something, do not be afraid to speak up because there's resources here on campus and there's people here who want to like help you reach that goal.
I don't, Eric, do you want to go? I say,
No, I was just gonna say, just in general, when we talk about academic success, like we have a list of the 10 top barriers of them, and realize that, only one of them, actually none of them actually now have to do with like intelligence. Like 9 of them have to do with mental health or stress in coping with and connection, and the other one's the flu. And so those are the top rated reasons why it might be barriers, which is important as to come when you come to counseling. It's like you all deserve to be here in college. Like you all have the intelligence. But the things that makes the experience is can you connect with other people? Like do you have it in to actually reach out, ask for help, do the support, and how you handle stress. But again, that's also related to social support because that helps with that. So finding that connection and being on a campus that's actually designed, that's really we call the connective culture here. I think is why a lot of our students are so successful.
um, I want to talk a little bit about, and this is full disclosure because I think it's important, and I found this out a while back when I did, since I think 7 years into me being here, I did something called Humans of TCU, and I still have people comment about this. I have three mental illnesses, and they were all discovered when I was in college. So that became, not only that, I have a substance abuse disorder. I've been sober for 26 years, which was discovered in college. So imagine being a sophomore, you've been an overachiever all your life, you've got great grades, but all this disaster is happening. And you're afraid to tell anybody because you and your brother are pretty much some of the first people to go to school, college. You're from a working class background. You don't even know how to ask for help. You just know you need it. And so once I was actually diagnosed, that became a whole, I had to figure out how to continue my studies and manage all this stuff that was going on at the same time. And this is where it's important to have those connections with services, with peers, where you have people you can talk to. So I think that for me was a big challenge, that in order to get all those degrees and get into this profession, I had to continuously manage that. And in an academic environment, I had to have spaces to go to make sure I had everything from my meds. How do I schedule things? How do I keep up with my schedule with all these things going on? I also have chronic illnesses. So there was a lot. But I think part of the success to my story is being able to rely on resources at the university level. And I can't stress that enough. And so to get back to when I got here and was interviewed for Humans of TCU, and they put it on social media, I wanted to talk about that. And this is where it's important to share the things that you're going through with your peers, with your academic services, because they can go, oh, well, you're struggling with this. I bet there's other students struggling with this. Let's see if we can do something about it on a university level. I shared that story, and 3 days later, I had a student come in and say, I've been diagnosed with the same illness you have, and I have no idea what to do. And so he had been diagnosed off campus. So the first thing I did was call the counseling. You got to call the counseling center, got to talk to academic services. Let's get you set up here, like get your stuff from back home. And so just because I said something about a situation I had gone through at a university level, somebody was able to get help with something they were struggling with on campus. They could go and talk to somebody. So once again, if you do have challenges, let somebody know. Nobody wants to see you fail here. I mean, that's not why we're here. We're here to make sure that you succeed and have things that you need. So don't feel like you can't ask somebody for help. Okay. I have students in my office all the time. They talk about the research paper, but they're also talking about, I have roommate issues. I'm struggling with finding food. How do I remember to do my laundry? I've given laundry advice. I mean, ask somebody. We are here. I think Eric would really stress that part, is there's a lot you can connect with at the university level, even through academics, even through social circles, that will help you succeed. You're all smart enough to be here. That's not a question. It's just, what else do you need to make this an enriching experience and get through it? So
Wow, thank you so much for the vulnerability. I think that really, helps us all see that, our challenges, yes, they are unique, but everybody's really going through their own stuff. And the more that we have that connection with others, the easier it is to overcome whatever it is life throws at us. Um, Dulce, I'm gonna turn the mic to you per se. Um, what do you think are the most popular clubs or organization on campus?
The first one that came in mind for clubs, just because I played it the other day, pickleball club has been on the rise recently. That was like something new. I remember my freshman year, it like started, and then I think it was last time I like opened up Instagram and like they're making their club meetings outside because of how many people they have that play pickleball now. But that's like on the rise in terms of clubs that came up to my mind. But in organizations, I would say the crew and the end are not only popular to be a part of, but also on the amount of events they host throughout the semester. So the crew will host events on the weekday, so Monday through like Friday. And even today they had like an event like the Texas Hoedown. So they had like a mechanical bull in the campus commons, and there's always something going on. And I like to say that like the crew is there as a study break. Like you can literally leave your dorm, walk through campus commons, and there's a bouncy house. And let me tell you something, you can be 21 and still get on a bouncy house. And then the other one is the end, and the end typically hosts events on like the weekends. So for example, they host our concerts, and recently they also do like they bring celebrities on campus. So I got to see Marcelo Hernandez this semester, which I was so excited about. Let me tell you something, he is funnier in person than he is on SNL. I mean, he's also shorter in person, but that's a different thing. But like the other day, they also had Dylan Sprouse. So those are like the most common organizations on campus just because they constantly have something going on. Just because, again, they want students to study, they want you to get those good grades, but they also don't want you to burn out. They want you to have something to look forward to apart from studying.
That's great to know. Always something every day of the week. Don't, there's never an opportunity to get bored unless you're not looking for things to do. Um, Kind of on that same topic, I'm gonna refer to Dulce first, but then if either of you would like to comment on anything, please feel free. Um, I'm wondering, somebody's wondering how accessible professors are to students. So how easy is it for you, Dulce, to like talk to your professors or get help from your professors?
Mhm. I would say they're pretty accessible from my experience that I've had. My sophomore year, I took microbiology, and my professor, his office hours always took place when I was working my TCU ambassador shift. But I would literally email him, and we would have like a different time where I would go and ask the questions. One thing about TCU is TCU requires all professors to have office hours. So there's a time that they allot for students to meet with them. And then obviously, if those office hours don't work for you, then you as a student have to communicate with the professor and let them know like, hey, this time doesn't work for me or stuff like that. Even today, I was like talking to one of my professors for farm, and I was like, hey, Dr. Cheek, like I can't make it to your office hours on Wednesdays. Like, what can we do? And he immediately was like, Thursdays, you have this gap in your schedule. We'll make it work. I can be there. So I would say it's also just about like the student reaching out to the professor. But in my personal experience, I've never had a problem with the professor not responding. And typically, my professors always respond in 24 hours. And if they don't, I always send up like a follow-up email, and it's typically just because like it got lost in their email files. But yeah.
And I would just add, being on this campus with this faculty staff ratio being what it is a huge plus. Because I do a lot of work with other schools that have a bigger faculty, and it's just a different experience because you have a big, large class, and of course, the faculty will have a hard time like doing that one-on-one intention. But I think here it's a whole lot easier because you have that. So.
Great. Um, all right, Dr. Wood, since you were last unmuted, I'm just gonna ask you this next question. How does TCU promote well-being, and are there any student-led mental health initiatives?
Oh, yeah. I mean, student led is pretty much start with that part. All of our peer support are student led. So we have peer support communities, and they're not clinical groups. They're just actually ways that communities that we can connect students who are like-minded. And we actually have our counseling center so popular where one side is where the counseling side, where we do all the therapists, and the other side is a peer support, where it's just basically lounge spaces. And we have students here all the time. And some of them might be mental health domains, but some of them aren't. Like we have a Dungeons and Dragons group going on tonight, and they play role-playing games. And we have a campaign like every night of the week from different students that obviously started from students. And so we've had all those peer support are actually, I would say, from students. But some of the other things that actually the university picked up is our Fire Connect program, where basically if students wanted to have someone to go to football games with, they're going to go to unions or other end events. They're just basic group meets. That actually started from the counseling center, but got so big that the university took it over. But yeah, there's actually a group of students. If you want to go to a football game, you can text it and they'll just go with you. Things like that. And so things like that you probably won't ever get on other campuses. So that's another thing what I just love about TCU that our students are so great. But yeah, our counseling center is literally split in half with student initiative. So
Thank you.
mhm.
Okay, we just got a new question coming in. And this anyone feel free to answer. How hard do you think it is to manage classes and extracurriculars?
Okay. I want to answer this one. I would say it's a challenge if you don't know how to plan your time, which I know is it's a very basic answer, but me personally, I'm a huge planner, and so if like based on my involvements, I have this whole planner where I write down my priority list and what I have each like day that I have to do, and that has helped me make time for my things. Like for example, with like TCU Rangers, I have the basketball games, the volleyball games, football games I have to work, but I make sure to write it in my planner so that if I have an exam coming up, I know which days to study in advance. So that way I'm able to still meet my academic requirements while also still meeting the requirements that I have as being a TCU Ranger. So another thing to add is like whenever you come to TCU, for specifically with like nursing, I know that they have like one resource for the nursing majors where if you don't know how to study, they have someone who literally gives you an exam that you take. And in that exam, they identify what your study method is and they teach you how to study with that study method. And there's also like another advisor in the nursing building where like if you are like, I don't know what to do with my time, maybe I'm studying a lot, but I'm not getting the grades that I want, that advisor will sit down with you and make you plan out your whole entire schedule from the date, like from the morning that you wake up to when you go to bed. And she will tell you, like, okay, you have this huge gap where you could have been studying instead of being on TikTok. So there's those resources, but I'm sure like other majors also have that. If you speak to your academic advisor, they can speak to you about like how to plan out your schedule and stuff like that.
I'm going to speak to this. First of all, you got to learn how your brain works. And I think that's the most, sometimes it's trial and error because um, like Dolce said, testing where you figure out, oh, this is my method of study is very important. I figured out early in college career, my professors couldn't understand why in class I did really well, like, because I had a lot of classes where you had to engage. But on paper, when I tried to do what the professor had set out for us to do, didn't translate. Well, I write differently than everyone else, and I had to figure that out. So that's one thing. And like I said, that first year, give yourself grace because a lot is going on. Like I said, you got to do laundry, you got to remember to eat, you got to study, you got to fill out where you're going. But what I always advise students to do when you first get your everything's in the syllabus. When you first get your syllabus, literally plan out that part of your life, and then learn how to say yes and learn how to say no, but let that schedule kind of guide you. Because if you know you have 3 exams and 2 papers due on one week, that previous week you might want to say no to some stuff. You might not be able to do everything you need to do. But if you see that coming, you can plan your more social activities. As I said, I was heavily involved in the theater. So, yes, I know I have auditions. I'm going to have a play I'm going to be in. How am I going to balance that with having to prepare for papers? If you kind of start your semester out and map it, that really, really helps. Don't wait till it's almost time to things to be due, or you have an event you have to plan for with your club to then sit down and try to prioritize everything. I cannot stress that enough. When you get those syllabus or your clubs has events they're going to do in 2 months, start thinking about that ahead of time. My father always says the 6 P's: proper preparation prevents pitiful performance. So follow that. So when you first get that, start thinking about, okay, how do I normally study? What works for me? Because what works for you might not work for someone else. Um, and that is critical. Learn the way you study and plan ahead. Plan ahead, plan ahead. And know that, if you say what you're going to plan, fate is going to laugh at you. So, like I said, give yourself some grace. Um, and I know a lot of people say college isn't the real world, but you learn how to do this stuff now because I'm an old person, and I can tell you, you continue to do the same stuff as you get older. You know, yes, I have to work 8 hours, but I also want to do this con, or I want to do this. I need to go to the crochet store and spend hours in there. So, you know, you have to kind of you learn how to negotiate now because you're going to continue to have to do it later.
I love that you call it a negotiation because that's really what life is all about. The better negotiator you become, the better you are at time management, people management. All of it falls into place when you know how to negotiate. All right. Dr. Wood, what advice would you give to students managing stress, particularly as they transition into college?
A couple of things. I mean, one, it's not bad, but it's just a fact of life. Like when you start in college, it's one of the few times in your life where everything can change. And that's actually why a lot of counseling centers exist. It's not because we think students have a clinical diagnosis, but in terms of the whole development, there's only about 3 or 4 times where you can predict everything will change. And ironically, starting college is usually the first one, and graduating college is usually the second one. And so, with all the change bookmarking the college experience, that's why college counseling centers exist. So one, I would say one, acknowledge that because college is exciting. You know, you got football, you got sports, you got all this. But we always say, think about how much your life is going to change from like graduation, high school, from starting college, a little everything. So it's not uncommon for students to come to, especially first year students, and they'll say everything on paper is great, but I don't know why I'm feeling anxious, and I don't know why I'm like feeling uptight. And we tell them, look how much your life has changed in the last 6 months. And if everything changes. So one, just acknowledge that even though things are great and even though you may be super excited, your whole life's changing, you know? And so the more you acknowledge that, the more you brace for it. I think that would be kind of a big step. And the other thing is like some people think that if you have like a history, this is more from the counseling perspective, it's tempting to view college as just a whole brand new start, you know, like this is a whole fresh perspective. And whatever struggles I had in high school is not going to be there in college. But again, there's a reason why there's a college counseling center. You know? Like we always tell people, if you're coming in here with a history of anxiety, call us first. You know, if you never need us, you never need us. But at least you can set up a plan. We know you, you know you. If you have any support systems that you use in high school, see if those support systems can also, they will be here, but go ahead and contact us because unlike high school, you have to reach out to us. We can't reach out to you. And so just go ahead and have that mentality with it. So those would probably be the two advice I would give. Mhm.
I love that. Um, all right, let's get back into some study habits, talk a little more about tips for building good relationship with professors and utilizing office hours. Anyone have tips that they'd like to share?
One of the things that I tell students, we have, especially if you have any kind of writing research assignments, one of the key things we do, if not the most important things we do at the library, is we have a research librarian for every discipline taught here. In other words, if you have a paper assignment in a discipline that you're not even majoring in, and you have no clue how to do research in it. I just had a student here today who's a business student who is having a literature class, and she's like, I don't know. This is all new to me. And she has to take that class in order to graduate. And so when you have an assignment, whether it's in your major or not, if you don't know where to start, schedule an appointment with a research librarian. I have a Calendly link. You'll email me and say, I need an appointment. I'll send you that Calendly link and say, you can schedule an appointment with me around your schedule. Just look at my Calendly link. If you can't make an appointment with anything that you see available, because I do see a lot of students, you let me know and we'll set up something. Not only do I work via email, I work via in person, I work via Zoom because I'm here to serve you. So one of the things that I would stress is when you get an assignment, don't wait till the last minute to start doing your research, things like that. Your assignment might not be due for 6 weeks. Go ahead and get the research out of the way, and you can literally email somebody to walk you through that. Um, our specialty is research, and most of us have degrees or experience in the fields we're researching in. And so I have students who, when they find out about us, every time they have an assignment, they'll schedule an appointment because we're available. And a lot of times we have communication with your faculty member too. So if you're not sure about an assignment or something like that, we can actually talk to them and say, hey, I have a student, they're doing this. Is this okay? Or these are the resources they're thinking about using, or they're thinking about changing the topic. Is this feasible? I can do some talking with your professor also. So there's that aspect. If you're having difficulty with the class as far as knowing or understanding the assignment, I may be able to ask questions that you can't quite formulate because I've worked with a professor for 16 years. So that too. Another thing is if you don't understand an assignment or you're not sure about assignment, ask your professor all the questions you need to. I know I keep stressing that, but ask questions because you can't get your questions answered if you don't ask them. And a lot of my students will say, well, I feel silly asking them, or send an email after class. Do what feels comfortable to you, but ask that question. That is part of good study habits. Ask what resources we have in the library. Like I said, a lot of times if we don't have something, we'll get it. We got bones for the anatomy students. We've got a database for the anatomy students because they asked for it. So you can come and check out bones, which is hilarious. Is the skull in? Yes, here you go. And so, what we may be able to get those resources for you as far as studying. We have all sorts of books. We have some textbooks, we don't have them all. So those are key things too.
I love that. Can I have the skull, please? I'm glad I was never an anatomy student. That just sounds like a question I wouldn't want to have to ask, but
And they're so panicked because it's anatomy. So it's very or the bones. I'm like, if people would overhear you and not know that we actually check out bones, they'd be really nervous. So
all right, this one is kind of more for anyone. They'll say, I know you're from Fort Worth, so I don't know how much you've had to deal with this one. But what advice do you have for students moving from far away and dealing with homesickness when they get to Fort Worth?
I mean, I can start now because we see that so much with first year students. First of all, it's not bad. I mean, there's a stereotype that it's really bad. I mean, really, homesickness breaks down. Anyone's a homesickness if they're separated from their attachment and there's a lot of change going on. And so college is kind of right for that. So it is kind of bittersweet because it's a negative type of feeling, but it also means that you're close to your attachment. So with that, in terms of the cure for homesickness or things that help, is that if you can develop attachments, new attachments, or have new routines. And so part of it, realizing that it's part of the process of transitioning. And homesickness is different from separation anxiety, which is definitely, if you feel that, that's what we do a lot of too. But really is just look for it. Doesn't mean you don't like the school. It doesn't mean that you can't handle starting colleges. It just means that you have this needs. You're kind of having distance from your attachment and all your routines have changed. And so give yourself grace to say, I need time to fill up more attachments and settle more routines. And then in time, the homesickness will kind of ease. So.
Great, thank you. Um, we are coming to an end, and so let's just end. If each of you want to take about a minute and tell us like maybe your biggest tips as we transition from high school to college, any tips that you'd like to share to the group.
as I said, ask questions. If there are any things that you already have in place, I think Dr. Wood spoke to this. If you you have mental health issues before you get here, if you have academic services you're already receiving, if you have things in place, when you hit campus, hit the ground running and go talk to counseling services, talk to academic services. Another thing is kind of explore campus. Come by and ask the research librarians what we have or how to do things. Uh, and then the last thing is when you get those schedules for class, plan ahead. Plan ahead. If you want to go to something, an event, make sure that you, when you're at that event, if you're at that football game or that end function, that you can enjoy it and not be stressed about what you're supposed to be doing. So those would be my main kickers.
I think for me, I would say just pragmatically take time to see what all the tuition benefits are. I mean, if it was me, I would just use them all just because. So I would make it, make a point to actually do that. I would also say just socially, yeah, I mean, you're coming to a new community. Most people don't know a lot of things. And I think TC is probably a culture where somebody will come up to you. But on the flip side, there's so much people think that, oh, I'll just come and just don't have to instigate. And there's no need for that. I mean, you're coming to college. Everyone here wants to meet new people. Some people think it might be weird to go up to somebody and say hi. But in colleges, that's absolutely okay. Because everyone wants to meet people. If you go to the blue and just be like, hey, I don't know you. I don't want to talk to you. See someone in your hall, someone in your class. Even though that might seem weird in high school, that's actually what people do in college. So if you might, have worry about instigating, maybe just challenge yourself to say hi to people you don't know. Like I said, at TC, someone will probably come up to you, but don't be afraid to be the instigator yourself. Because we always say your best friends are here, you haven't met them yet. And I think in college, that's absolutely true.
My biggest piece of advice would just be don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Like everyone is like even if they're from Fort Worth or they're from a different state, like everyone is on the same boat and everyone's trying to put themselves out there to get to know things, figure out what they like and what they don't like. And to put it into perspective, if you're not putting yourself out there, then how do you expect to like know about all these things? Like if you don't share like, oh, I'm afraid about this, no one's gonna know that you're afraid of it because you're keeping it and you're bottling it. So just put yourself out there.
Great. I love you. I love it. I love you too, Dulce. Um, but thank you all so much for joining us today. Lots of great points of advice. For all the people who are here, all the participants, we will be sending a recording with some of this advice. And as always, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Here at the Office of Admissions, like that's really our goal is to help make that bridge between starting college or finishing high school and starting college. We want to make sure you know what departments on campus have their arms wide open for you and are ready to help you. So without further ado, we'll send you all home. Have a good night. Thank you so much. And go Frogs.